Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip,
And I'm CJ.
and it is Friday in the Riv, the day after the State of the Northeast Union bullshit speech. So I guess we could talk about that for a little bit because the mainstream media is trying to, distort everything as they usually do. It
Yeah,
was,
they're out there saying that he came out very strong, which he did. He did come out with a strong opening. Um, he called out Trump without saying his name 13 or 14 times. He made a couple of mistakes in his speech. Like I thought I heard him say ABF instead of IBF. Um, there's a question of did he say the nurse's name properly? Did he get the right name?
no, he
Um,
did. He did not.
yeah.
He
So
called a Lincoln, not Lincoln.
yeah,
And he also said he was going to overturn Roe versus Wade. I didn't
yes,
realize that a lawsuit on a bug spray had gotten all the way to the Supreme Court. Listen, they practiced 2 weeks. They shot him up full of stuff. The entire Democratic contingent had to stand up and stop clapping because he was just going to start to go off script. And he did refer to illegals as illegals, which they're not happy about. But I'm sure the mainstream media will not cover that because
no, they didn't.
he did call them illegals.
Yep,
And
yeah, they didn't. And he's saying that he has a bipartisan bill for border for sealing the borders, but it doesn't. And the bill that he presented that was rejected by the House, the Senate was agreeing on it. I don't know why, but the Senate was agreeing on it, and it was sent to the House. And what happened is that bill allows for about 100 more judges to be appointed, appointing more ICE security people along the borders, cut the time from 6 years to 6 months on asylum hearings and ability to stay in the country. And but here was the thing. He said it will cut this down to 5,000 people a day will be able to come into the country. That's a lot of people. Whether you want to believe it or not, that's a lot of people. But it was only $5,000 after so many illegals had already come across the border. That was to restrict it. They were able to come across the border still, but once they came across the border for I don't know whether it was $5,000, 50,000 people, whatever it may have been, 5,000 would be limited, and
that
that just wasn't acceptable. It wasn't acceptable to me. That's for sure.
Well, it's not acceptable because it wasn't a close the border bill. It was to continue illegal immigration into this country. You're going to let 5,000 illegals in this country. That's 1 point before you before. But he also had the option not to close the border down under that bill.
That's
So you're
right.
going to have a minimum of 1,825,000 illegals coming into the country if they allowed 5,000, only 5,000 every
Right,
year.
and the provision that he wanted to put in the bill was that he and any future president would be able to close the border whenever it was necessary. But it didn't say in the bill when it was necessary.
Look, look, that's the biggest crock of shit ever played, and it's because of those losers that are in Washington living in their bubbles because they play ball with each other as they get rich, like Mitch McConnell, who's a disgrace. He's finally stepping down, and he's got business interests in China. They don't care about the people. They live in their own little bubbles up there. That bill, listen, we had the border shut down with nothing. All he had to do, everybody forgets, he knocked out like 64 provisions that Trump had. We had the border closed. We had the securest border we've had ever, without the wall being completed. This is all political bullshit. That's all they ever deal in up there. They have a total disconnect with real people. And I saw that again today on the local news about housing. They did that 1 week thing on the crisis in housing, and then this morning I saw a little excerpt on Channel 12, and they were talking about, oh yeah, well, people are talking about rent control, and people are, and then they came out of the woodwork, the elitists that don't care about people. Remember when people went to the Fall River City Council and said, if they don't like it, let them move out. Go jump in the Taunton River. Move out. Where are they going to move? They can't afford rents in Fall River. Now, they can't afford them anywhere because every other place is even more expensive. The crisis is about affordable housing throughout the entire country and in cities where there are a lot, but they actually, they didn't say who sent it in, of course, but one of the elitists, he actually said, and I'm paraphrasing, he or she, it didn't identify, whatever. He actually said, well, there shouldn't be any reductions in rents. If they can't afford the rent, let them move to a state that's less attractive. You realize the total arrogance of that statement? Like, you're so lucky to live in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, these blue swill pits that are spending billions. If they can't afford, what are they going to move to? Number one, they can't move, you morons. If they can't afford their rent, they can't afford to move to Alabama or Mississippi or somewhere else where it's cheap to live. Cheaper. You may get lower rents. It's about working people getting affordable housing. People who work for a living, who have paid their rents, and now these rents are exorbitant. But and it shows how absolutely retarded they are. This move away, well, you know what's going to happen when you move away? I'm going to tell you something. Turn on your TV set, get your head out of your ass, and look at what's happening in these blue states with people like you. Governor Hochul, the one who embraced the illegals, let them all come to New York. We love them all. Yes, we do. Sending the National Guard to the subways of New York. We're no longer a sanctuary state. We can't afford it. New York City, we can't afford it. All the sanctuary states, we can't afford this anymore. They don't want to be sanctuary states. They're not like Martha's Vineyard, where they only last 24 hours. Now they're all going bankrupt, so that's what they wished for. So what happened, that idiot in Rhode Island who sent that in, what you want is all the people who work for a living not to be able to live in your state and pay taxes. So what you're going to be left with is elitists like you and the illegals you wanted to come in to work for peanuts, and they're not going to pay any taxes. They're going to get free health care, and you're going to pay quadruple, and the state will go bankrupt. Belly up. They're going bankrupt now. That's what you wish. You're so dumb you can't even make that correlation. You have no ability to critically think. All you do is look down your nose at regular working people. Let them move out to a less attractive state. Well, I'm going to tell you something. Everybody that's left in Fall River that can't afford their rent would love to move out of Fall River, but they can't. And the problem is, the problem is nationwide now. That's how bad it's gotten. It's even gotten so bad that states where never had a housing problem are having it now. Because these nitwits up in Washington and these nitwits up in Boston, they're just running rampant, spending money for illegals and every other thing, and their pet projects like pork projects. And they had a list of the pork projects which were inconceivable. And this is what happens. So this is nuts, CJ. I mean, this is nuts. These people just don't care. And that'll segue it later on into they don't care about our retirements.
I watched the entire State of the Union address. Do I still have eyes? Do I still have eyes? My ears were ringing all night. No, but I liked the Republican response. It didn't attack. It was pretty factual. It was a mother who's a senator, a young senator, 42 years old, who was sitting at her kitchen table talking about her family and the needs of our families and our communities. And she made it clear that it's not everything that it's cracked up to be. And the State of the Union address was basically nothing but a campaign speech. And the press, the mainstream media actually acknowledged that that was a campaign speech. That was kicking off the entire campaign. Because basically all you've got left running is Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Or as the president said, my predecessor. He never said his name. It was his predecessor. So makes for an interesting time, that's for sure.
Well, I think what really showed the highlight of that, their insensitivity and how totally disingenuous that these Democrats are, is when the Gold Star father, who was screaming at Biden, whose son was killed in Afghanistan in that debacle of a withdrawal, was yelling, Abbey Gate. They arrested him. They arrested a man in the House of the People for calling out the president for basically murdering his son. That's how much they care. He should have been in the front row, and he should have got an explanation that has never come about how we managed to lose 13 military members, Army and Marines, in a withdrawal from Afghanistan when we hadn't lost one single soldier for the entire previous year when Trump was the president. That withdrawal was a military debacle. There was no secure zone. They let them come right to the gates. They've never even had, and he was looking at his watch when they brought the caskets back. That shows how much they really care about this country. They all talk a great game, but they don't give a shit about any of these people. And they never have to worry again because there's no draft. In the old days, their kid might have got drafted, then they would have had to get him in a National Guard. Well, now they send the National Guard. In those days, you didn't go to they had the draftees and the people who enlisted. We had enough personnel. But that showed, I think, to me, that was the low light of that, the two. He can't pronounce the name of the 22-year-old co-ed who had her skull smashed by an illegal. Couldn't say the name of that individual. Would not respond to the Gold Star father. They don't give a shit. And then they had one of that Ro Khanna or whatever the hell his name is from California making excuses. I saw a little excerpt. Well, he only got arrested for stealing $200 in New York. Who knew he would be a murderer later on? They're making excuses for letting these illegals out after they commit a crime. Number one, they committed a crime coming into this country. And if they commit another one, there shouldn't be 3 years, 6 years, 6 months before you bounce them. Biden's already gone on record saying, DUI isn't a crime. You can't deport them. Well, what? We've had DUIs with illegals that killed people. Murdered them, drunken driving. They don't get deported. You think they care about regular people? I'll tell you what, if he kills one of his family, they wouldn't deport him. They'd stick him in a CIA black site for the rest of his life. In a hole. Because we don't count. We don't count to those people. When somebody gets up and says, oh, he only stole $200. Well, you go steal $200. You're going to jail. You're getting arrested. You're going to spend a night in jail, get arraigned. You get probation, you get something. You can't steal money, but they can. Oh, who knew he was going to be a murderer? Well, we knew one thing: he was an illegal. That State of the Union is always a political speech. But last night he was so full of shit. I just saw a statistic today. Wages have actually gone down 2.1%. They were crowing about wages. Wages have gone down 2.1% when you compare what you're making now and what you can actually buy. You're making less money because everything costs more.
Well, that's the thing. The inflation wasn't taken into consideration at all.
It's all bullshit. And
right.
Look, everything they do is spinology, and this is the whole problem with that. And I'll let you go back, because it infuriates me because, like I said, a Gold Star father arrested for showing his frustration. And before I turn it back to you, I'll remind you what Teddy Roosevelt said. It is your right as an American, and he said this in his speech, to criticize the president. And as a matter of fact, he said in that speech, and you can look it up, he said, not only do you have a right to criticize the president, you have an obligation to criticize him if you're not happy. But he also said, but if he does something right, give him credit for that. That's a president. That was a president. And with that, CJ, I'll turn it back to you. And they locked up a Gold Star father. They are scum.
Well, when I saw him being escorted out of the chamber, I was a little taken aback, because Marjorie Taylor Greene was in there with a MAGA hat on, and she was screaming from her seat all kinds of things. But they left her alone. I guess they couldn't escort her out or arrest her. And the Speaker of the House made it clear to the Republicans, I want a sense of decorum in the chamber. And for the most part, he got that. That was respect. And for the most part, they gave that to him. For the most part.
Yeah, in spite of the fact that Biden didn't let the Speaker of the House introduce him, he's so brain dead he just walked up to the mic because they'd been rehearsing for 2 weeks. If he would have taken time to stand there for a minute while he got introduced, he would have probably forgot the first 5 lines of his speech.
Yeah, it was very interesting. And the big problem I saw, and this shows you how obtuse this president is. He knows that the cameras are on him. He knows that the Republicans have to give their response. But they can't shut the cameras off until he's left the chambers. And he went and had meetings on the floor. He had to be 20, 30 minutes on the floor talking. Finally, the network said, we gotta cut. And they cut out on him. And they went to the Republican response after commercial break. Because remember, there's no commercials during that whole thing. And they're expected to do that for the president. This is why we have a problem. He was, he wants to make everyone feel like they're important, like they're the only thing in the world. That's what he's good at doing. Well, if that's the only thing he's good at doing, put somebody else in as president. Because I'll tell you right now, I heard some of his conversations because he had an open mic next to him all the time. Always be careful with those open mics.
I
Always be careful
believe
with them. That's
I
for sure.
believe Brett Hume. See, everything is in the eyes of the beholder. All the Democrats are going to spin everything, and Republicans. Brett Hume said all he did in that speech was sound like an angry old man who didn't know what he was talking about. So, but that's the thing. But with that, talking about them not caring, let me just quickly get back into the retirement. I said I would. I read you those things about their fiduciary obligation and that they're not supposed to abdicate it, their authority to allow a mayor to skew it, not have a neutral. So I referred to a couple of statutes. Retirement, chapter 32 is the retirement law of the Mass General Laws, and they referred to a couple of things. Chapter 32, section 23.3, and that basically says fiduciary standards. A fiduciary, as defined in section 1, shall discharge his duties for the exclusive purpose of providing benefits to members and their beneficiaries with skill, care, prudence, and diligence. And they didn't. They didn't care about the people because they abdicated their law. Then the other thing they cited was CMR 841.01. And that is a board member's duty. A board member shall discharge all of his or her duties solely in the interest of the members and their beneficiaries, for the exclusive purpose of providing benefits to the members and their beneficiaries. And then something they didn't cite, but I'm citing today, is the next section. 24, violations of contributory retirement laws, enforcement provisions. If the Public Employee Retirement Administration Commission determines that any governmental unit, any officer or employee thereof, or the State Board of Retirement, the Teachers Retirement Board, which is us, or any other board, violated or neglected to comply with any provision, he shall give notice to the governor and the attorney general. And it goes on and on and on about what they can do, and that's what I plan on. That's what I plan on doing. I plan on taking this to the wall. And the penalty for violations are any person who willfully refuses or neglects to comply with any provision of sections 1 to 28 inclusive, or any rule or regulation established thereunder, shall be punished by a fine of not more than $1,000 or imprisonment for not more than 1 year. I would love to see that, but I'm going to say, and when I go to the city council meeting, not the next one, because I have to I have to go over this stuff at the retirement meeting next Thursday, and of the association, and they have a meeting on Tuesday, so the retirees will not be apprised of what's going on, because we didn't have a meeting, because we thought that we had already had something secured, because we voted duly, and then they ambushed it and twisted everything around and didn't do their fiduciary responsibility. So the following meeting, I will be there, and I will present the package to the city council and basically say that the two members who are presently the city's representatives to the retirement board should be removed from the retirement board because they have been malfeasant. They are public officials who failed in their sworn duty to represent the best interest of the retirees and their beneficiaries. Now, you may be able to get away with this on your other boards where you got all the other bobbleheads on the board going like this, But this is statutory, Paulie, and I'm gonna take it, and I don't care. I don't care, win, lose, or draw, the people will know. People like you, people like the mayors that were present from '02 to '12 are the people who destroyed this system, that brought us down to the third from the bottom, actually second from the bottom if you don't want to count the Boston teachers, because they have a separate, technically it's a separate system. It's still under the rules of chapter 32, but they have a separate system. You've got the mass teachers, and Boston has its own. But this is statutory, and you can't do this to this board because you got people like Jimmy Machado and I that are going to complain. And I'm going to complain to everybody. And I know that you probably only get a slap on the wrist. They'll probably only say, oh, you shouldn't do it. You may even leave these two malfeasant individuals on the board. But we're looking at legal options to depose both of them and ask them if you contacted them. I will definitely I am going to file ethics complaints against both of them because I can prove they violated Parac Memo 28, sections 23, 24 of Chapter 32. I have it on video when I presented them and told them that their obligation was to the retirement system. I had case law showing them that, and they didn't want to hear it. And they never ever attempted to even look and consider. They not only fired somebody who'd served the board for a long time because he didn't vote their way, they pulled him, Paul Coogan, but then they wouldn't even consider one of probably the best applicant I have ever seen, which they were obligated under the law to do. So that's what's going to happen. So not the next city council meeting, but the following one, I will be there, and I will send the city council a packet with all of this stuff. It's going to be a pretty good packet. They won't read it. I've given this to them before. I've given them the letter I sent to Paul Coogan when I was on the transition committee and said, you cannot keep skimming from the retirement system. That's why we got where we are. But the Paul Coogan administration gives out thousands and then steals nickels and dimes from everybody. You can't use the retirement system as a slush fund. You can't do it. Because what are we doing? And if the council is going to be an accessory, they're going to be called out on it in public in front of a camera. What are we trying to do? Get to be the 351st, the last? Are we trying to beat Springfield? Are we trying to get to be last place for funding? And who will then suffer? The people in the system, not the politicians. But I had to get that in, CJ, because that's the way it is. And the Coogan regime, we've seen politics before, but we've never seen such blatant disregard for laws and for process, and without even making even a veiled attempt to cover up the fact that we don't give a shit. We're just going to get our way, just like Joe Biden said to the Supreme Court justices last night, looked them in the face, and they didn't look too happy, said, I don't care. I'm going to overturn Roe versus Wade. But he didn't really mean Raid, because, don't go there and grab your can of Raid and say you're going to, there's a Supreme Court case on it, because it isn't. Don't look for some kind of settlement. It's not going to happen. It's Roe. But Roe versus Wade, not Raid. Wade. Wade. And the guy who barely got out of law school and who cheated and who said he graduated at the top of his class and graduated at the bottom is going to tell the Supreme Court they don't have any jurisdiction anymore. The hell with the Constitution. Just like Paul Coogan says, the hell with the laws, the charter. I only use what I want and I disregard the rest. With that, back to you.
It's always about me. It's always about me, me, me. Whether it be president or mayor, it's all about me. And remember, Paul's always said, I follow the law. I follow the charter. Yet you violate it every chance you get. I'll call you out right now, Paul. Here's how you're violating the charter. You have somebody sitting on 2 boards. That is illegal. That's against the charter. You can't do that. Are you afraid to take that person off of one of those boards? Seems you are. Because you left them there. Have them pick one and appoint somebody else to the other one. We know it'll be another bobblehead, like the 5 you have on the city council. That just go, yes, Paul, yes, Paul, yes, Paul, yes, Paul, yes, Paul. I mean, that's what happens. And you people put those 5 people back, put those 5 people in, made sure that it happened, and guess what? We get nothing. Once again, we get nothing except the screw job. We get the screw job at every turn. And this is what happens here in Fall River. Regardless of what you think, regardless of who you believe in, if they believe in you, the citizens, they'll probably get screwed. Because when the candidate believes in the citizens, the powers that be, the rich and undeserving, think they control everything. And they make it happen. And they can make it happen when you only have 7, 8, or 9,000 people voting. Because you can't get anything to change. Hell, we made a change with 16,000 people voting. And that was just 16,000. Imagine if 50% came out and voted. The changes we could make in this city. We've said it numerous times on this show. I will say it again. I will not stop saying it. You need to follow the money, number 1. And number 2, you need to re-elect no one. Re-elect no one. And because you're too stupid to not realize you cannot re-elect people for 30 years and nothing's changed. Doing the same thing over and over again with no change means you're retarded. You're insane. This is what happens. We need change. We need verifiable. We need financially responsible change. And it's going to be almost impossible to get in this city as long as we don't vote and we don't hold our politicians accountable. Okay? Linda goes. Laura Sampson goes. Even Andrew Raposo. I mean, sometimes he votes against the mayor. Sometimes he votes with the mayor. I don't like a wishy-washy. Be one way or the other. Okay? Be one way or the other. Because you cannot have it on both sides. And the one statement that Joe Biden made yesterday, which I thought was interesting, he said, "You cannot love America only when you win." Sure you can. If you lose, you get pissed off, but you accept it. You can still love America when you lose. And you can still speak about the loss. And you can try to fight the loss. That's what America's about. That's what America's about. And that's what this city is about. We're nothing but a working class community. Blue collar. That's what we are. And Paul's trying to make us something we can never be.
Yeah, that's true, but that's the irony of it. What Joe Biden said, what you just said, is the irony of it. See, that's what the Democrats, that's the way they truly feel, but they don't understand what they're saying is something that is it's basically it's a conflict. It's a paradox because he says if you lose, you know that they want to. Anybody who has a different opinion from them doesn't love America. That does
Right.
not mean because you lost an election that automatically that you hate America because you're pissed off at what they do as politicians. See, that's the Democratic deflection bullshit story. That's not the way it is. Do you realize that the majority of military personnel and police vote Republican? That's a known fact. They're conservatives by nature. And do they hate America? They put on a uniform and fight for this country. 13 people died in Afghanistan because of this bonehead, and their father was pissed off. Does he hate America? He gave a son for this country. They lost a son for this nation. And for that rotted bag of oatmeal to make that simplistic, gigantic oversimplification, that's the Democratic deflection. That's their talking point. If you don't agree with us, you are one of the next 15 things. Racist, misogynist, terrorist. You hate America. We love America. You really do? You love America so much you won't even close its borders, but you'll send billions of dollars to close Ukraine's border. You people are full of shit. And that's the bottom line. And with that, I'll turn it.
You brought up a good point. We're going to spend billions of dollars to seal the border of Ukraine, but we can't seal our own. That's a very, 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 very good point. And that's one of the things that we have to accept. Okay? That our borders need to be closed. That we need to accept. We need to stop the influx of the illegals. That we need to accept. We need to accept the fact that our governor, Maura Healey, is a douchebag. She cannot get it together. You have to admit that our state representatives, Carol Fiola, Alan Sylvia, Paul Schmidt, they all voted to give another $245 million to the shelter system that's being abused by the illegals. But they put a cap on it this time. Oh, isn't that nice? 9 months, unless you're in a training program, and then you can stay in it longer. We can't afford it anymore. We just can't. Well, enough of that for today. I want to thank you all for watching, and remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend.